Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Die Hard in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, West Films Friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Die Hard. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storylines, starcast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So we'll start the video. Die Hard is a 1988 American action film directed by John McTiernan and written by Jeb Stuart and Stephen E. de Souza, based on the 1979 novel Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorpe. It stars Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman, Alexander Godunov, and Bonnie Bedelia, with Reginald VelJohnson, William Atherton, Paul Gleason, and Hart Bochner in supporting roles. Die Hard follows a New York City police detective, John McClane, Willis, who becomes entangled in a terrorist takeover of a Los Angeles skyscraper while visiting his estranged wife during a Christmas Eve party. Stuart was hired by 20th Century Fox to adapt Thorpe's novel in 1987. His first draft was greenlit immediately, as the studio was eager for a summer blockbuster the following year. The role of McClane was turned down by a host of the decade's most popular actors, including Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. Known mainly for work on television, Willis was paid $5 million for his involvement, placing him among Hollywood's highest-paid actors. The deal was seen as a poor investment by industry professionals and attracted significant controversy towards the film prior to its release. Filming took place between November 1987 and March 1988 on a $25 million to $35 million budget and almost entirely on location in and around Fox Plaza in Los Angeles. Expectations for Die Hard were low. Some marketing materials omitted Willis's image, ostensibly because the publicity team determined that the setting was as important as McClane. Upon its release in July 1988, initial reviews were mixed. Criticism focused on its violence, plot, and Willis's performance, while McTiernan's direction and Rickman's charismatic portrayal of the villain Hans Gruber were praised. Defying predictions, Die Hard grossed approximately $140 million, becoming the year's 10th highest-grossing film and the highest-grossing action film. Receiving 4 Academy Award nominations, it elevated Willis to leading man status and made Rickman a celebrity. Die Hard has been critically reevaluated and is now considered one of the greatest action films of all time. It is considered to have revitalized the action genre, largely due to its depiction of McClane as a vulnerable and fallible protagonist, in contrast to the muscle-bound and invincible heroes of other films of the period. Retrospective commentators also identified and analyzed its themes of vengeance, masculinity, gender roles, and American anxieties over foreign influences. Due to its Christmas setting, Die Hard is often named one of the best Christmas films of all time, although its status as a Christmas film is disputed. The film produced a host of imitators. The term Die Hard became a shorthand for plots featuring overwhelming odds in a restricted environment, such as Die Hard on a Bus, in relation to speed. It created a franchise comprising the sequels Die Hard 2, 1990, Die Hard with a Vengeance, 1995, Live Free or Die Hard, 2007, and A Good Day to Die Hard, 2013, plus video games, comics, and other merchandise. Deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the United States Library of Congress, Die Hard was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2017. Plot: on Christmas Eve, New York City Police Department, NYPD, Detective John McClane arrives in Los Angeles, hoping to reconcile with his estranged wife Holly at a party held by her employer, the Nakatomi Corporation. He is driven to Nakatomi Plaza by a limo driver, Argyle, who offers to wait for McClane in the garage. While McClane washes himself, the tower is seized by the German radical Hans Gruber and his heavily armed team, including Carl and Theo. Everyone in the tower is taken hostage, except for McClane, who slips away, and Argyle, who remains oblivious to events. Gruber is posing as a terrorist to steal the $640 million in untraceable bearer bonds in the building's vault. He kills Executive Joseph Takagi after failing to extract the access code from him and tasks Theo with breaking into the vault. The terrorists are alerted to McClane's presence, and Carl's brother, Tony, is sent after him. McClane kills Tony and takes his weapon and radio, which he uses to contact the skeptical Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD. Sergeant Al Powell is sent to investigate. Meanwhile, McClane kills more terrorists and recovers their bag of C4 and detonators. Realizing Powell is about to leave, having found nothing amiss, McClane drops a terrorist's corpse onto his car. After Powell calls for backup, a SWAT team attempts to storm the building, but is counterattacked by the terrorists. McClane throws some C4 down an elevator shaft, causing an explosion that kills some of the terrorists and ends the counterattack. Holly's co-worker Harry Ellis attempts to negotiate on Gruber's behalf, but is killed by Gruber when McClane refuses to surrender. While checking the explosives on the roof, Gruber encounters McClane and pretends to be an escaped hostage. McClane gives Gruber a gun. Gruber attempts to shoot McClane but finds the weapon is unloaded, and he is saved only by the intervention of other terrorists. McClane escapes but is injured by shattered glass and loses the detonators. Outside, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI agents take control. They order the power to be shut off, which, as Gruber had anticipated, disables the final vault lock so his team can collect the bonds. The FBI agrees to Gruber's demand for a helicopter, intending to send helicopter gunships to eliminate the group. McClane realizes Gruber plans to blow the roof to kill the hostages and fake his team's deaths. Carl, enraged by Tony's death, attacks McClane and is seemingly killed. Gruber sees a news report by Richard Thornburg on McClane's children and infers that he is Holly's husband. The hostages are taken to the roof while Gruber keeps Holly with him. McClane drives the hostages from the roof just before Gruber detonates it and destroys the approaching FBI helicopters. Meanwhile, Theo retrieves an escape vehicle from the parking garage but is knocked out by Argyle, who has been following events on the limo's CB radio. A weary and battered McClane finds Holly with Gruber and his remaining henchmen. McClane seemingly surrenders to Gruber and is about to be shot, but grabs his concealed service pistol taped to his back and uses his last 2 bullets to wound Gruber and kill his accomplice. Gruber crashes through a window, but grabs onto Holly's wristwatch and makes a last-ditch attempt to kill the pair. McClane unclasps the watch and Gruber falls to his death. Outside, Carl ambushes McClane and Holly. Carl is shot dead by Powell. Holly punches Thornburg when he attempts to interview McClane. Argyle crashes through the parking garage door in the limo and drives McClane and Holly away together. Cast Bruce Willis as John McClane, a New York City police detective. Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber, the ruthless leader of the terrorists. Alexander Godunov as Carl, Gruber's second-in-command. Bonnie Bedelia as Holly Gennaro McClane, a high-ranking Nakatomi executive and John's estranged wife. Reginald Vell Johnson as Al Powell, an LAPD sergeant. Paul Gleason as Dwayne T. Robinson, the LAPD deputy chief. Devereaux White as Argyle, John's limousine driver. William Atherton as Richard Thornburg, an unscrupulous TV reporter. Clarence Gilliard as Theo, Gruber's tech specialist. Hart Bachner as Harry Ellis, a sleazy Nakatomi executive. James Shigeta as Joseph Yoshinobu Takagi, Nakatomi's head executive. Other cast members include Gruber's henchman, Bruno Doyon as Franco, Andreas Wisniewski as Tony, Joey Pliwa as Alexander, Lorenzo Cachalanza as Marco, Gerard Bond as Christoph, Dennis Hayden as Eddie, Al Leong as Uli, Gary Roberts as Heinrich, Hans Buhringer as Fritz, and Wilhelm von Homburg as James. Robert Davey and Grand L. Bush appear as FBI Special Agents Big Johnson and Little Johnson, respectively. Tracy Reiner appears as Thornburg's assistant, and Taylor Fry and Noah Land make minor appearances as McClane's children, Lucy McClane and John Jr. Production, Development, and Writing. The development of Die Hard began in 1987 when screenwriter Jeb Stuart was in dire financial straits. His script, purchased by Columbia Pictures, had been abandoned, and a contract at Walt Disney Pictures was not providing him with sufficient income. Stuart had 6 weeks between contracted work, so his agent Jeremy Zimmer contacted Lloyd Levin, the head of development at the Gordon Company, a producing arm of 20th Century Fox. Levin asked Stuart to work on an adaptation of the 1979 novel Nothing Lasts Forever, written by former private investigator Roderick Thorpe. Thorpe had been inspired to write Nothing Lasts Forever by a dream he had, in which armed assailants chase a man through a building, after watching the 1974 disaster film The Towering Inferno. Fox had adapted the book's 1966 predecessor, The Detective, for the 1968 film starring Frank Sinatra as NYPD detective Joe Leland, and purchased the sequel rights before Nothing Lasts Forever had been written. Levin gave Stuart creative freedom as long as he retained the Christmas in Los Angeles setting. The concept, he considered, would provide an interesting aesthetic. The film was pitched as Rambo in an Office Building, referring to the successful Rambo film series. Producers Lawrence Gordon and Joel Silver hired director John McTiernan because of his work with them on the successful 1987 action film Predator. McTiernan agreed to direct on the condition that the film would have some joy and not simply contain mean, nasty acts seen in other terrorist films. Stuart began working 18-hour days at his office at Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, which left him exhausted and on edge. 11. After an argument with his wife, he went for a drive and saw a box in his lane. Unable to avoid it, he was forced to drive over it and discovered it to be empty. According to Stuart, he pulled over on the side of the freeway, his heart pounding. From this, Stuart conceived a central theme of the story of a man who should have apologized to his wife before a catastrophe. He returned home to reconcile with his wife and wrote 35 pages that night. To shape the McClanes' relationship, Stuart also drew upon the marital problems of his peers, including divorces and ex-wives reverting to use their maiden name. John McClane was named John Ford initially, but 20th Century Fox felt this was disrespectful to the deceased director of the same name. Stuart chose McClane as a good, strong Scottish name, based on his own Celtic heritage. He described the character as a flawed hero who learns a lesson in the worst possible situation and becomes a better, but not a different, person. Having no experience writing action films, Stuart drew on his experience writing thrillers, focusing on making the audience care about McClane, Holly, and their reconciliation. As Stuart pitched his story to executives, Gordon interrupted him, told him to complete a draft, and left the meeting. Stuart finished his first draft just under 6 weeks later. Stuart credits Levin for helping him understand Nothing Lasts Forever. He adapted many sequences faithfully, including a C-4 charge being thrown down an elevator shaft and the book's central character Joe Leland leaping from the roof. However, the novel is told entirely from Leland's perspective, and events he is not present for are not detailed. Its tone is also more cynical and nihilistic. Leland visits his drug-addicted daughter at the Claxon building, and she dies having fallen from the building alongside villain Anton Gruber, who is using naive male and female guerrilla soldiers to rob the building because of Claxon's support for a dictatorial government. This made their motivations less clear, and Leland more conflicted about killing them, especially the women. Leland is written as an experienced older man working as a high-powered security consultant. Stuart rejected the novel's tone for being too sad, and believed an older action hero, Leland being over 60, was nonsensical. Stuart created new material for scenes when McClane is not present, expanding upon or introducing characters. He gave Powell a wife and children, allowing him to relate more closely to McClane, and Argyle, whose novel counterpart disappears early in the story, is present throughout Stuart's draft, supporting McClane by broadcasting rap music over the terrorists' radios. Among the script's original characters is the unscrupulous journalist Richard Thornburg. A fan of prominent Western film actor John Wayne, Stuart was inspired to carry a Western motif throughout the script, including cowboy lingo. He befriended a construction superintendent at the under-construction Fox Plaza in Los Angeles, allowing him access to the building to gain ideas on how to lay out the characters and scenes. He delivered the finished screenplay in June 1987. It was greenlit the following day, in part because 20th Century Fox needed a summer blockbuster for 1988. Casting as Die Hard was based on the novel sequel to the film adaptation of The Detective. The studio was contractually obliged to offer Frank Sinatra the role. Sinatra, who was 70 at the time, declined. The role was offered to various major stars, including Sylvester Stallone, Richard Gere, Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, Mel Gibson, Don Johnson, Richard Dean Anderson, Paul Newman, James Caan, and Al Pacino. The prevailing action archetype of the era was a muscle-bound, invincible macho man like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was offered the role, but he wanted to branch out into comedy and turned it down to star in Twins, 1988. Willis was known mainly for his comedic role in the romantic comedy television series Moonlighting, starring opposite Sybil Shepherd. He declined the role because of his contractual obligations to Moonlighting, but when Shepherd became pregnant, the show's production was stopped for 11 weeks, giving Willis enough time to take the role. McTiernan's girlfriend had a chance meeting with a representative of CinemaScore and asked them for analysis of Willis as the star. Their analysis showed that casting Willis would not have a negative impact. His participation was confirmed 2 weeks later. The choice was controversial as Willis had only starred in one other film, the moderately successful comedy Blind Date 1987. At the time, there was also a clear distinction between film and television actors, though films like Ghostbusters 1984 had demonstrated that television stars could lead a blockbuster film. Other television actors like Shelley Long and Bill Cosby had failed in their recent attempts to make the transition. Willis received $5 million for the role, giving him a salary comparable to more successful, established film actors like Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty, and Robert Redford. 20th Century Fox president Leonard Goldberg justified the figure by saying Die Hard needed an actor of Willis's potential, and Gordon said that Willis's everyman persona was essential to conveying the idea that the hero could actually fail. Other Fox sources were reported as saying the studio was desperate for a star after being turned down by so many popular actors. Willis said, "They paid me what they thought I was worth for the film, and for them." He described the character as unlike the larger-than-life characters portrayed by Stallone or Schwarzenegger, saying, "Even though he's a hero, he is just a regular guy. He's an ordinary guy who's been thrown into extraordinary circumstances." Willis drew upon his working-class upbringing in South Jersey for the character, including that attitude and disrespect for authority, that gallows sense of humor, the reluctant hero. Rickman was already in his early 40s as he made his screen debut as Hans Gruber. He was cast by Silver, who had seen him perform in a Broadway version of Les Liaisons Dangereuses, playing the villainous Vicomte de Valmont. Bedelia was cast at Willis's. Vel Johnson appeared as Al Powell in his first major film role at the suggestion of casting director Jackie Birch, with whom he had worked previously. Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman, Lawrence Fishburne, and Wesley Snipes were considered for the role. Ellis is portrayed by Hart Bochner, an acquaintance of Silver. His role was shot in chronological order over 3 weeks. McTiernan had wanted the character to be suave like actor Cary Grant, but Bochner conceived of the character's motivations coming from cocaine use and insecurity. McTiernan hated the performance initially until he noticed Gordon and Silver were entertained by Bochner's antics. Rewrite screenwriter Stephen E. D'Souza rewrote Stuart's script because he had experience in blending action and comedy. He approached the story as if Gruber were the protagonist. He said, "If Gruber had not planned the robbery and put it together, McClane would have just gone to the party and reconciled or not with his wife. You should sometimes think about looking at your movie through the point of view of the villain who is really driving the narrative." D'Souza used blueprints of Fox Plaza to help him lay out the story and character locations within the building. The script continued to undergo changes up to and during filming. Several subplots and traits for characters other than McClane were created during the first few weeks of filming because Willis was still working on Moonlighting. He would film the show for up to 10 hours and then work on Die Hard at night. McTiernan gave Willis time off to rest and tasked Souza with adding the new scenes. These included scenes with Holly's housekeeper, Holly confronting Gruber following Takagi's death, an introductory scene for Thornburg, and more moments between Powell and his fellow officers. Silver wanted a scene between McClane and Gruber before the film's denouement, but Souza could not think of a plausible scenario until he happened to overhear Rickman affecting an American accent. He realized this would allow Gruber to disguise himself when he met McClane, and the earlier scene of Takagi's murder was reworked to conceal Gruber's identity from McClane. Due to the addition of the Gruber-McClane meeting scene, a different one in which McClane kills Theo was excised. In Stuart's original script, Die Hard took place over 3 days, but McTiernan was inspired to have it take place over a single night, like Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. He did not want to use terrorists as the villains, as he considered them to be too mean, and avoided focusing on the terrorists' politics in favor of making them thieves driven by monetary pursuits. He felt this would make it more suitable summer entertainment. McClane's character was not fully realized until almost halfway through production. McTiernan and Willis had determined that McClane is a man who does not like himself much but is doing the best he can in a bad situation. McClane's catchphrase, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," was inspired by old cowboy lingo, including cowboy actor Roy Rogers' own "Yippee-ki-yah, kids," to emphasize his all-American character. 19. There was a debate over whether to use "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker" or "Yippee-ti-yay, motherfucker." Willis endorsed the former. Filming principal photography began in November 1987 and concluded by early March 1988 with an approximate $25–35 million budget. Filming took place almost entirely in and around Fox Plaza in Century City, situated on the Avenue of the Stars. The location was chosen late in production by production designer Jackson DeGovia. A mostly unoccupied building was needed, which the under-construction Fox Plaza offered. It was secured with 2 main conditions: no filming during the day and no damage from explosions. Cinematographer John DeBont said the building's design was distinct, making it a character on its own, and clear views of the building were available from a distance, enabling establishing shots as McClane approaches it. The surrounding city could be seen from within the building, enhancing the realism. DeBont frequently used handheld cameras to film closer to the characters, creating a more cinematic intimacy. Very little of the film was storyboarded beforehand because DeBont believed intricate storyboarding made his job redundant. Instead, he and McTiernan would discuss that day's filming in detail and the feeling or sensation they wanted to convey. DeBont was more concerned with creating a dramatic rather than an attractive shot. He cited the use of real flares in the film that generated unpredictable smoke and sometimes obscured the image. Willis's first day on set was on November 2, 1987. He came straight from filming Moonlighting to shoot one of his most pivotal scenes, where McClane leaps from a rooftop as it explodes behind him, saved only by a length of fire hose. Willis found acting in Die Hard difficult because it differed from previous experiences in that he was often alone, not having any personal encounters with others. He did not spend much time with the rest of the cast between takes, opting to spend it with his new partner, Demi Moore. In contrast to their on-screen dynamics, Bedelia and Vel Johnson spent most of their time between scenes with Rickman. When asked to throw Holly to the floor, Rickman refused because he believed it was not a fitting action for the civilized Gruber and that Holly, a self-possessed career woman, would not have let him. The film's ending had not been finalized when filming began. In the finished film, Theo retrieves an ambulance from the truck the terrorists arrived in to use as an escape vehicle, but as this was a late addition, the truck the terrorists had been filmed arriving in was too small to hold an ambulance. Another scene, showing the terrorists synchronizing their Tag Heuer watches, also showed the truck was empty. This scene had to be deleted, leading to other necessary changes. As scripted, McClane realizes that the American hostage he encounters is Gruber because of the distinctive Tag Heuer watch he observed on the other terrorists. The watches were no longer an established plot point. It necessitated the introduction of a heroic scene for Argyle, who gets to stop Theo's escape. Devereaux actually punched Gilliard during the scene, which was added in only in the last 10 days of filming. There was flexibility with some roles, depending on the actors' performances, meaning some characters were kept in the film longer and others killed off sooner, 38. The actors were also given some room to improvise, like Theo's line, "The quarterback is toast," Bachner's "Hans, Bubby, I'm your white knight," and the henchman Uli stealing a chocolate bar during the SWAT assault. McTiernan took stylistic influence from French New Wave cinema when editing the film. He recruited Frank J. Uriost and John F. Link to edit scenes together while in mid-motion, contrary to the mainstream style of editing used at the time. Music. Main article. Die Hard soundtrack. Before hiring composer Michael Kamen, McTiernan knew he wanted to include Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, commonly known as Ode to Joy, having heard it in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Kamen objected to tarnishing the piece in an action film and offered to misuse German composer Richard Wagner's music instead. Once McTiernan explained how the Ninth Symphony had been used in A Clockwork Orange to highlight the ultra-violence, Kamen had a better understanding of McTiernan's intentions. In exchange, Kamen insisted that they also license the use of Singin' in the Rain, 1952, also used in A Clockwork Orange, and Winter Wonderland, 1934. He mixed the melodies of Ode to Joy, Winter Wonderland, and Singin' in the Rain into his score, mainly to underscore the villains. The samples of Ode to Joy are played in slightly lower keys to sound more menacing. The references build to a performance of the symphony when Gruber finally accesses the Nakatomi Vault. The score also references Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. Kamen initially saw a mostly incomplete version of Die Hard and was unimpressed. He saw the film as primarily about a phenomenal bad guy who made McClane seem less important. Kamen was dismissive of film scores, believing they could not stand alone from the film. His original score incorporates pizzicato and arco strings, brass, woodwinds, and sleigh bells added during moments of menace to counter their festive meaning. There are other uses of classical diegetic music in the film. The musicians at the party play Brandenburg Concerto No. 3 by Johann Sebastian Bach. McTiernan did not like a piece created for the final scene in which Carl attempts to kill McClane, and decided to use a temporary track that was already in place, a piece of James Horner's unused score for Aliens, 1986. Cues are also used from the 1987 action film Man on Fire. Die Hard also features Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC, which would go on to be considered a Christmas classic, in part because of its use in the film. Stunts and designs. Stunts. The perception of film stunts changed shortly before production of Die Hard, following a fatal accident on the set of Twilight Zone the movie, 1983, and a push was made to prioritize a film's crew over the film itself. Even so, Willis insisted on performing many of his own stunts, including rolling down steps and standing on top of an active elevator. The first scene he shot was his leap from the top of Nakatomi Plaza with a fire hose wrapped around his waist. The stunt involved a 25-foot, 7.6 meters leap from a 5-story parking garage ledge onto an airbag as a 60-foot, 18 meters wall of flame exploded behind him. He considered it to be one of his toughest stunts. The explosive force pushed him towards the edge of the airbag, and the crew was concerned he had died. Stuntman Ken Bates stood in for Willis when his character is hanging from the building. A set was used for the following scene where McClane shoots out a window to re-enter the building. It was shot approximately halfway into the filming schedule so that all involved had gained more stunt experience. The window was made of fragile sugar glass that took 2 hours to set up, and there were only a few takes for this reason. Instead of a hoist, a team of stuntmen positioned below the window dragged the hose and pulled Willis towards the edge as they could better control Willis's fall if he went over it. Editor Frank Uriosti kept the scene where McClane falls down a ventilation shaft and catches onto a lower opening. Willis's stuntman accidentally fell further than intended. During a scene where McClane shoots a terrorist through a table, Willis suffered a permanent 2/3 hearing loss in his left ear caused by firing loud blank cartridges close to his head. For Gruber's fall from Nakatomi Plaza, Rickman was dropped between 20 and 70 feet. Reports are inconsistent. He was suspended on a raised platform and dropped onto a blue screen airbag. This allowed the background behind him to be composited with footage taken from Fox Plaza and falling confetti that looked like bearer bonds. Rickman had to fall backward onto the bag, something stuntmen avoid to control their fall. McTiernan convinced Rickman by demonstrating the stunt himself and falling onto a pile of cardboard boxes. Rickman was told he would be dropped on a count of 3, but he was let go earlier to elicit a genuine look of surprise. McTiernan said there's no way he could fake that. The first take was used, but McTiernan convinced Rickman to perform a second one as backup. Capturing the stunt was difficult because it was impossible for a human operator to refocus the camera fast enough to prevent the image from blurring as Rickman fell away. Supervised by visual effects producer Richard Edlund, Boss Film Studios engineered an automated system using a computer that rapidly refocused the camera via a motor on its focus ring. A wide-angle lens camera shooting at 270 frames per second was used, creating footage that played 10 times slower than normal. Despite these innovations, the camera struggled to keep Rickman entirely in focus during his 1.5-second fall. The scene cuts away from Rickman as the usable footage runs out. To complete Gruber's fatal descent, Bates was lowered 318 feet, 97 meters, from Fox Plaza in a harness that slowed his fall as he neared the ground. Some of the Fox Plaza residents, frustrated by the debris and destruction around the building, refused to turn off their office lights for exterior shots of the plaza. Months of negotiations took place for permission to drive a SWAT vehicle up the steps of Fox Plaza. A railing knocked over during shooting was never replaced. Small explosives moving along a guide wire were disguised as the terrorist rockets, giving the appearance of them striking the vehicle. In the scene where McClane throws C4 down the elevator shaft to stop the assault, the effects team unwittingly blew out every window on one floor of the building. The final helicopter scene took 6 months of preparation, and only 2 hours were set aside to film it. It took 3 attempts above Fox Plaza and 9 camera crews filming with 24 different cameras. DeBont said the different angles enhanced the on-location realism. Mortar-like devices filled with propane were used for explosions. They took 10 minutes to install and offered a 6-second burst of flame. The explosion of the Nakatomi rooftop was created using a miniature model. This was the only miniature used in the film. Because Hans Boehringer, Fritz, was an inexperienced actor and filming was behind schedule, a Native American stuntman was put in a blonde wig and equipped with squibs to capture the character's death in one take. Design. To prevent the in-building locations looking similar because of the standard fluorescent office lighting, DeBont concealed small film lights in high locations. He controlled these to create more dynamic and dramatic lighting. This gave him the opportunity to use unusual light positioning. He also placed fluorescent tubes on the floor in one scene to indicate they had not been installed. The shifting nature of the filming script meant some sets were designed before it was known what they were to be used for. The Nakatomi building's 30th floor, where the hostages are held, was one of the few sets. It contained a recreation of the Frank Lloyd Wright-designed house, Fallingwater. Degovia reasoned that it reflected the contemporary trend of Japanese corporations buying up American corporate assets. An early design for the Nakatomi logo was too reminiscent of a swastika, and it was redesigned to look closer to a samurai warrior's helmet. A 380-foot-long, 120 meters matte painting provided the city backdrop as viewed from inside the building's 30th floor. It featured animated lights and other lighting techniques to present both moving traffic, daytime and nighttime. Release. Context. The summer of 1988 was expected by film industry executives to be dominated by action and comedy films, although a broader range of films were released that year. More films targeted older audiences rather than teenagers, a reflection of the increasing age of the average audience member. Sequels to successful films, Crocodile Dundee 2 and Rambo 3, were predicted to control the May box office and break opening weekend revenue records. Industry executives also had high expectations for the comedies Coming to America and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Expectations for Die Hard were low compared to its action film competition, the Schwarzenegger starring Red Heat and Clint Eastwood's The Dead Pool. The New York Times noted that Die Hard and the comedies Big Top Pee-wee and Bull Durham would be closely scrutinized by the industry for success or failure. Die Hard was singled out for Willis's salary and the failure earlier that year of his previous film, The Western Sunset, which brought into question his leading man capabilities. Lawrence Gordon agreed that not using a major action star like Stallone or Eastwood meant audience interest in Die Hard was lower than it might have been. The larger salaries paid to these stars were based on the built-in audience they could attract to a film's opening week, with good word of mouth supporting the film thereafter. But Willis did not have a built-in audience. Marketing. Willis featured prominently in the film's early marketing campaign, but it underwent several changes as the film's release date drew nearer. Willis had developed a reputation as an arrogant actor concerned with his own fame. His refusal to address this or speak about his personal life to the media had reinforced this perception. For his part, Willis said that he wanted the media to focus on his acting. There were reports that cinema audiences would moan at Willis's appearance in Die Hard trailers, and that a representative from an unnamed theater chain had pulled the trailer in response. Research by several film studios revealed that audiences had a negative opinion of Willis overall, and little or no interest in seeing him in Die Hard. Newsweek's David Anson called Willis the most unpopular actor ever to get $5 million for making a movie. As 20th Century Fox's confidence in Willis's appeal faltered, the film's posters were changed to focus on Nakatomi Plaza, with Willis's name billed in tiny print. Willis's image was not included in the film's first full-page newspaper advertisement in mid-July. 20th Century Fox executive Tom Schirach denied that Willis was being hidden, saying their marketing strategy had changed when they realized that the building was as important a character as the actor. Defying expectations, sneak previews of the film were well received by audiences, and the week following its release, the advertising began featuring Willis more prominently. Despite his dislike of interviews, Willis appeared on several daytime shows to promote the film. Explaining why he was more involved in the promotion for Die Hard, Willis said, "I'm so excited about this film. To me, it represents why I wanted to be an actor." Box office. Die Hard's premiere took place on July 12, 1988, at the Avco Theater in Los Angeles, California. In North America, the film received a limited release in 21 theaters in 13 cities on July 15, 1988, earning $601,851, an average of $28,659 per theater. It was considered a successful debut with a high per-theater average gross. The Los Angeles Times said that the late change in advertising focus and diminishing popularity for action films should have worked against Die Hard. Instead, positive reviews in the limited release had made it a must-see film. It received a wide release the following week on July 22, 1988, across 1,276 theaters and earning $7.1 million, an average of $5,569 per theater. The film finished as the number 3 film of the weekend, behind Coming to America, $8.8 million, in its 4th week of release, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $8.9 million, in its 5th. The film fell to number 4 in its 3rd week with a further gross of $6.1 million, just behind Coming to America, $6.4 million, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $6.5 million, and the debuting romantic comedy Cocktail, $11.7 million. In its 4th weekend, it rebounded to the number 3 position with $5.7 million. While the film never claimed the number 1 box office ranking, it spent 10 straight weeks among the top 5 highest-grossing films. In total, the film earned an approximate box office gross of between $81.3 million and $83 million. This made it the seventh highest grossing film of 1988, behind Crocodile Dundee 2, $109.3 million, buddy comedy Twins, $111.9 million, fantasy comedy Big, $114.9 million, Coming to America, $128.1 million, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $154.1 million, and comedy drama Rain Man, $172.8 million. Outside North America, Die Hard is estimated to have earned $57.7 million, giving it an approximate cumulative gross of between $139.1 million and $140.7 million. This figure makes it the 10th highest grossing film worldwide of 1988 behind Big, $151 million, Cocktail, $171 million, A Fish Called Wanda, $177 million, Rambo 3, $189 million, Twins, $216 million, Crocodile Dundee 2, $239 million, Coming to America, $288 million, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $329 million, and Rain Man, $354 million. The summer of 1988 saw box office grosses totaling $1.7 billion, breaking the previous year's record-breaking summer by $100 million, 65, and it was the most successful summer since 1984, when only 3 films earned more than $100 million in North America. Defying pre-release expectations, Die Hard was considered an enormous success. In a year otherwise dominated by comedy films, Die Hard's overperformance was an anomaly compared to other action films such as Rambo 3 and Red Heat, which failed to meet box office expectations. Film critic Sheila Benson believed this demonstrated a generational shift in audiences and their tastes. In particular, 25 to 37-year-old men had turned against alcohol abuse, sexism, and mindless machismo. Along with films like Big and Young Guns, 1988, Die Hard is credited with revitalizing 20th Century Fox, which had had few successes in preceding years. It also showed the action genre was not dead. Reception. Critical response. Initial critical reviews of Die Hard were mixed. Audiences reacted more positively. Polls by the market research firm CinemaScore found that audiences gave it an average rating of to F scale. McTiernan's direction was praised. In the Chicago Tribune, Dave Kerr wrote that McTiernan's logical direction created a sense of scale in the film that made it seem more significant than its content. The scene in which the terrorists take over the building was described as a textbook study by Kevin Thomas, providing a strong introduction to both McTiernan's abilities and DeBont's cinematography. Degovia's set design was complimented by Kerr as ingenious. Ebert praised the stunts and special effects. Critics were conflicted over Willis's performance. Many considered Die Hard Willis's breakout role, reviving his faltering transition from television to film star and demonstrating his leading man status and comedic range. Kathy Huffines and James Mills considered Willis's performance an evolution of his moonlighting character David Addison with less sexism and more masculinity. Huffines wrote that the performance improved as Willis hewed closer to his own working-class background. Reviewers including Terry Lawson and Paul Willistein believed that despite expectations, Willis had been well cast, bringing a necessary vulnerability and sense of humor to a contemporary hero, one who displays remorse, fear, and indecision without being overly macho or comedic, and delivers dialogue that other action stars could not. Mark Andrews argued that this vulnerability was essential to creating tension because audiences care about the character's fate. Some reviewers felt that Willis's strongest talent, his comedic ability, had been woefully underutilized. Writing for the Washington Post, Hal Hinson complimented Willis's grace and physical bravado that allowed him to stand alongside the likes of Stallone and Schwarzenegger. Conversely, Vincent Canby said he lacked toughness. Reviewers generally agreed that Willis's dramatic acting was unimpressive or limited. Jay Boyar believed his abilities were perfect for McClane, although Kerr criticized him as only a television-level star. Richard Schickel said Willis's performance was whiny and self-involved, and that removing his undershirt by the film's denouement was the totality of his acting range. He acknowledged it was difficult to perform when acting only against special effects. Rickman's performance was praised. Karen James said he was the film's best feature, portraying the perfect snake, and Henson likened his work to the sneering, malevolent performance by Laurence Olivier in Richard III, 1955. Kerr called Gruber a classic villain who combined the silliness of actor Claude Rains and the smiling dementia of actor George Macready. Canby said that Rickman provided the only credible performance, and Roger Ebert, who was otherwise critical of the film, singled it out for praise. Critics routinely praised Bedelia's performance and lamented that she was underused, in favor of McClane's and Powell's relationship. Schickel highlighted a scene in which McClane confesses his sins to Powell before rescuing his wife, robbing their marital reunion of meaning. Ebert and Schickel both felt that only McClane's and Powell's characters were developed. The film's success was credited to the remote relationships built between Willis, Rickman, and Veljohnson by Mike Sidoni. Huffines and Mills credited the performances with anchoring the film. Ebert focused his criticism on the police captain, portrayed by Gleason, citing the character as an example of a willfully useless and dumb obstruction that wasted screen time and weakened the plot. Thomas commended the casting of several minority actors. The action and violence were criticized by many reviewers. Kevin Thomas said the film had plot holes and lacked credibility. He believed it was the result of a calculated effort to please the broadest possible audience, and concluded that it had squandered its potential as an intelligent thriller for numbing violence and carnage. Canby offered a similar sentiment, suggesting the film would appeal only to audiences that required a constant stream of explosions and loud noises. He described it as a nearly perfect movie for our time, designed to appeal to audiences. Canby described as kidults, adults with the mindset of children. One violent scene, in which Powell saves McClane by shooting Carl, was singled out. Schickel believed it to be a cynical scene that undermined the humanity formed between McClane and Powell by having Powell find redemption for his own mistakes through violence. Henson believed the audience was deliberately manipulated into cheering for the act. Writing for the New York Times, James said the film offered fun escapism while relying on action cliches. But Henson countered that despite the relentless thrills, the film was not enjoyable. Reviews identified allusions in Die Hard to films such as The Towering Inferno and The Poseidon Adventure, 1972, Alien, 1979, Aliens and RoboCop, 1987. Kerr said Die Hard emulated Alien and RoboCop by developing a humorous and sentimental design that perfected the action genre, but in doing so it lacked a personality of its own. Writing for the Poughkeepsie Journal, Sidoni felt Die Hard made previous action blockbusters such as Predator, Missing in Action 1984, and Rambo look like Tupperware parties. Die Hard was one of several 1988 films labeled morally objectionable by the Roman Catholic Church, along with The Last Temptation of Christ, Bull Durham, and a fish called Wanda. Robert Davey saw the film with Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger was positive, but did not like Davey's character narrative, saying, "You were heroic, and now you've turned into an idiot." Accolades. At the 1989 Academy Awards, Die Hard was nominated for Best Film Editing for Frank J. Uriost and John F. Link, Best Visual Effects for Richard Edlund, Al DeSaro, Brent Boats, and Tane Morris, Best Sound Effects Editing for Stephen Hunter Flick and Richard Shore, and Best Sound for Don J. Bassman, Kevin F. Cleary, Richard Overton, and Al Overton Jr. Michael Kamen won a BMI TV Film Music Award for his work on the score. Post-release. Home media. Die Hard was released on Video Home System, VHS cassette, in January 1989. It was a popular rental, debuting as the third most rented film on the early February rental charts, rising to number 1 the following week. It spent 6 of its first 7 weeks in release at number 1 until it was replaced by A Fish Called Wanda at the end of March. By 1997, it was estimated to have earned $36 million from rentals. Die Hard was released on DVD in 1999 as part of a collection with its sequels Die Hard 2, 1990, and Die Hard with a Vengeance, 1995. It was released separately as a special edition DVD in 2001, including commentary by McTiernan, Degovia, and Edlund, and deleted scenes, trailers, and behind-the-scenes images. It was released on Blu-ray in 2007. Die Hard, the Nakatomi Plaza Collection, was released in 2015, collecting all 5 Die Hard films on Blu-ray in a container shaped like Nakatomi Plaza. For its 30th anniversary in 2018, a remastered 4K resolution version was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray. The set also includes a standard Blu-ray and digital download. A limited edition steelbook case version was also released. Other media. See also Die Hard video games. Die Hard merchandise includes clothing, Funko Pops, coloring and activity books, crockery, Christmas jumpers and ornaments, and an illustrated Christmas book retelling the film. A third-person shooter video game, Die Hard was released in 1989 for the Commodore 64 and Windows. Different top-down shooter versions were released for the TurboGrafx-16 and the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES. The TurboGrafx-16 edition begins with McClane fighting terrorists in a jungle. The NES version offers a that slows McClane's movements after he repeatedly steps on shattered glass. Die Hard Trilogy, 1996, a popular game for the PlayStation, adapted the first 3 Die Hard films. In 1997, the Japanese arcade game Dynamite Deka was redesigned and released in Western territories as Die Hard Arcade. Players choose either McClane or secondary character Chris Thompson to battle through Nakatomi Plaza, defeat terrorists led by White Fang, and rescue the president's daughter. 2 first-person shooters were released in 2002. Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza, which recreates the events of Die Hard, and Die Hard Vendetta, which serves as a narrative sequel to the film, pitting McClane against Gruber's son Piet. Die Hard, The Ultimate Visual History, a book chronicling the development of the Die Hard film series, was released in 2018 to coincide with the film's 30th anniversary. A board game based on the film was released in 2019. Developed by USAopoly, Die Hard, the Nakatomi heist casts up to 4 players as McClane, Gruber, and his terrorists, each vying to complete their opposing tasks. Thematic analysis. Die Hard has been described by critics such as Richard Brody and Chris Hewitt as a story about obtaining redemption through violence. McClane comes to Los Angeles to save his marriage, but makes the same mistakes that drove Holly away. Brody and Hewitt suggest that it is only after McClane defeats the terrorists through violence that their marriage is seemingly reconciled. Similarly, Powell is haunted after accidentally shooting a child and finds redemption by drawing his gun to shoot Carl. Several male characters who are driven by rage or ego suffer for it, including the FBI agents Carl, Ellis, and McClane, who nearly loses Holly by showing off after shooting Gruber. Ebert notes the more even-tempered characters, often African-American, fare better. McClane identifies himself as a Roman Catholic, a religion requiring penance to earn redemption. Brody said that McClane endures physical punishment, including his feet being cut by glass shards to create bloody stigmata. In making these sacrifices, he salvages his family. In this sense, McClane can be seen as a modern, working-class, Christ-like figure. Alexander Boone compares McClane violently reclaiming his wife to the Greek figure Odysseus, slaughtering his wife's suitors. McClane is rewarded for his masculinity, despite demonstrating negative male traits. Jeffrey Brown believed McClane's undershirt emphasizes his masculine physical form. This outfit is worn by other action characters like Rambo and female characters displaying masculine traits such as Rachel McLish, Ace's Iron Eagle 3, and Linda Hamilton, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Powell and Argyle are not McClane's physical equals, but they prioritize relationships, and when called on to act, they succeed. McClane possesses an imposing physicality, but is clumsy and reliant on improvisation, and succeeds only because of the relationships with his allies. It is McClane and Powell's relationship that is particularly instrumental to McClane's success. The pair share a non-romantic intimacy that enables McClane to confess his failings as a husband in a way he did not with Holly, allowing McClane to grow as a person. Gruber fails because he is isolated, self-interested, and sacrifices his team for his own survival. Peter Parshall observed that McClane and Gruber are reflections of each other. Brody contrasts McClane, an all-American stereotype compared to Western cowboy stars like Roy Rogers, John Wayne, and Gary Cooper, to Gruber, a classically educated European villain who refers to America as a bankrupt culture. Elizabeth Abel wrote that when compared to the superheroes of the previous decade in films like Superman 1978 and Raiders of the Lost Ark 1981, McClane is portrayed as physically but realistically masculine, conveying the idea of a real man who possesses independent, intrinsic strength. According to Justin Chang and Mark Olson, this can be seen as a response to Reaganism, the political positions of United States President Ronald Reagan, promoting values of the American dream, self-reliance, initiative, and technological advancement. Willis believes that if given the choice, McClane would pass the responsibility of dealing with the terrorists onto anyone else, but he is ultimately compelled to serve as a reluctant hero. When the character is introduced, he is wearing his wedding ring. Scott Tobias wrote this serves as a symbol of his marital commitment. Holly is presented as the opposite. She uses her maiden name and is not wearing her wedding ring. Instead, she is gifted a Rolex watch by her employers, serving as a symbol of her commitment to her job and the division in her marriage. When McClane unclasps the watch at the film's end to free Holly from Gruber's grasp, the totem of their separation is broken, and they appear to have reconciled. Parshall describes the negative portrayals of female characters in Die Hard. They appear sexualized in pinup posters, suggest drinking while pregnant, or are away from their families on Christmas Eve at a work function. Holly takes a position of authority following her boss's death, but that power is delegated to her by Gruber, and it is used in traditionally feminine ways to care for her colleagues. Takagi is replaced in Holly's life with a different dominant male, McClane. Darren Payne wrote that Die Hard reflects the contemporary decline of men as the main household earner as more women joined the workforce and blue-collar jobs were being lost to foreign countries. In response, an American cowboy saves the day, rescuing his captured wife from a foreign-owned tower. Die Hard has elements that are anti-government, anti-bureaucracy, and anti-corporation. A terrorist asserts McClane cannot harm him because there are rules for policemen, rules he intends to exploit. McClane responds, "So my captain keeps telling me," suggesting that he operates outside of bureaucratically approved procedures. Brody wrote that the police often present a bigger obstacle than the terrorists. They believe they are in control of events, unaware the terrorists have already anticipated their every action. The police chief is portrayed as incompetent, and the FBI is shown to be indifferent to the lives of the hostages as long as they kill the terrorists. McClane is an everyman fighting against terrorists who are dressed like elite big city workers. As Ellis states, the only difference between the corporate employees and the terrorists is that he uses a pen and Gruber uses a gun. The police, the FBI, and an intrusive journalist are each punished for standing in McClane's way. Parshall noted the Christmas setting can be seen as an attack on traditional societal values. The corporation hosts a party on Christmas Eve, keeping employees away from their families, and the villains cynically appropriate Christmas iconographies. By defeating them, McClane upholds tradition and defends society. Alongside the mainly German group of terrorists, Nakatomi Plaza is owned by a Japanese corporation, and the hostages are American. Brody identified this as reflecting American anxieties about foreign powers at a time when Japanese technology firms threatened to dominate the American technology industry. When McClane prevails, the suggestion is that American ingenuity will prevail. America's old enemies, Germany and Japan, are portrayed as having forsaken their integrity in the pursuit of financial gain. Dave Kerr said the film embodies a resentful 1980s blue-collar rage against feminists, yuppies, the media, the authorities, and foreign nationals. Brody notes that the film can also be considered progressive in its portrayal of its African-American characters, as cast members Vel Johnson, Gilliard, and White are featured in prominent and important roles. The AV Club noted that, unlike many other 1980s films, Die Hard is not an allegory for the Vietnam War. The film mocks the idea when one FBI agent remarks that their helicopter assault is reminiscent of the war. His partner responds that at the time he was only in middle school. Even so, Empire believed the film references Vietnam by showcasing an ill-equipped local taking on highly equipped foreign invaders. This time, America wins. Drew Ayers described the complex layout of Nakatomi Plaza as analogous to the concealing jungles of Vietnam. Legacy. Influence on the film industry. Before Die Hard's release, Hollywood action films often starred muscle-bound men like Schwarzenegger and Stallone, who portrayed invincible, infallible, catchphrase-spouting heroes in unrealistic settings. Willis's portrayal of John McClane redefined the action genre, presenting a normal person with an average physique completely counter to that archetype. He is failing, both personally and professionally, and serves as a vulnerable, identifiable hero who openly sobs, admits his fear of death, and sustains lasting damage. Importantly, his one-liners do not come from a place of superiority over his foes, but as a nervous reaction to the extreme situation in which he finds himself, which he is only able to overcome through enduring suffering and using his own initiative. Similarly, Rickman's portrayal of Gruber redefined action villains who had previously been bland figures or eccentric madmen. Gruber ushered in the clever nemesis. He is an educated, intelligent villain who serves as the antithesis of the hero. He has been referred to as one of the most iconic villains in the genre. Empire magazine called Gruber one of the finest villains since Darth Vader. Rickman described the role as a huge event in his life. Though other more typical 1980s-style action films were released, the genre gradually shifted to a focus on smaller, more confined settings, everyman heroes, and charming villains with competent plans. Die Hard raised Willis from television stardom to worldwide recognition and brought fame to Rickman. Willis's salary was seen as the peak of the 1980s bidding wars between new and old managers vying for jobs. The New York Times described it as the salary equivalent of an earthquake, and MGM UA chairman Alan Ladd Jr. said that it threw the business out of whack. Like everybody else in town, I was stunned. It was seen as the most substantial change to salaries since Dustin Hoffman was paid $5.5 million to star in Tootsie, 1982, at a time when top salaries ranged from $2 million to $3 million. It was expected that salaries for major stars would increase significantly to ensure they were paid more than a newer star like Willis McTiernan transitioned his success into directing an adaptation of one of his favorite novels, The Hunt for Red October, 1990. Vel Johnson's performance resulted in his casting in the 1989-1998 sitcom Family Matters. Cultural influence. In 2017, Die Hard was selected by the United States Library of Congress to be preserved in the National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. In July 2007, Bruce Willis donated the undershirt worn in the film to the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian Institution. The blood and sweat-stained shirt is considered iconic, an emblem of McClane's difference from archetypal, invincible heroes. Fox Plaza has become a popular tourist attraction, although the building itself cannot be toured. A floor used for filming became Ronald Reagan's office. When his head of staff toured the under-construction area, it was littered with broken glass and cartridge cases. A giant mural depicting McClane's crawl through a Nakatomi Plaza vent was erected at the Fox Studio lot in Century City to celebrate the film's 25th anniversary in 2013. One of the most influential films of the 1980s, Die Hard served as the blueprint for action films that came after, especially throughout the 1990s. The term Die Hard on In has become shorthand to describe a lone, everyman hero who must overcome an overwhelming opposing force in a relatively small and confined location. Examples include Under Siege, 1992, Die Hard on a Battleship, Cliffhanger, 1993, Die Hard on a Mountain, Speed, 1994, Die Hard on a Bus, and Con Air or Air Force One, 1997, Die Hard on a Plane. Willis himself recalled being pitched a film that was Die Hard in a skyscraper. He said he was sure it had already been done. It was not until the 1996 action thriller film The Rock, Die Hard on Alcatraz Island that the tone of action films changed significantly. And the increasing use of CGI effects allowed films to move beyond the limitations of real locations and practical stunts. Writing for The Guardian in 2018, Scott Tobias observed that none of these later films readily captured the complete effectiveness of the Die Hard story. The film has been a source of inspiration for filmmakers including Lexi Alexander, Darren Aronofsky, Brad Bird, Joe Carnahan, Gary Jenkins, Joe Lynch, Paul Scheer, Brian Taylor, Dan Trachtenberg, Colin Trevorrow, and Paul W.S. Anderson, 151. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was among the action films director James Gunn recommended people watch. The film's popularity has seen it referenced across a wide variety of media, including TV shows, films, video games, music, and novels. It has even been referenced in media targeted at children. Willis cameos as McClane in the 1993 parody film Loaded Weapon 1. There has been much debate over whether Die Hard is a Christmas film. Those in favor argue that the Christmas setting is sufficient to qualify it as a Christmas film. Those opposed argue that it is an action film whose events happen to take place at Christmas. A 2017 YouGov poll of over 5,000 British citizens determined that only 31% believe that Die Hard is a Christmas film. Those who did skewed under the age of 24, while those opposed were mainly over 50. A similar 2018 Morning Consult poll of 2,200 American citizens determined that only 25% supported its status as a Christmas film. Those aged between 30 and 44, who were young during the peak of the film's popularity, were most in favor. Souza and Stuart support it being a Christmas film, while Willis feels it is not. On the film's 30th anniversary in 2018, 20th Century Fox stated that it was the greatest Christmas story ever told, releasing a re-edited Die Hard trailer that portrays it as a traditional Christmas film. According to Souza, Silver predicted the film would be played at Christmas time for years. Critical reassessment. Die Hard is now considered one of the greatest action films ever made. On the film's 30th anniversary in 2018, The Hollywood Reporter wrote that Die Hard was easily one of the most influential films in the action genre, whose influence could still be seen in contemporary films. The Guardian and the British Film Institute regard it as the quintessential American action film, the latter calling it one of the 10 greatest action films of all time. Deadline, Hollywood labeled it a staple of the action genre that launched a classic franchise. Writing for Vanity Fair, K. Austin Collins said that despite the number of times he had viewed the film, it remained a persistently satisfying and well-crafted piece. It is listed in the 2003 film reference book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, which says that the film effectively redefines the action movie as one-man army. A retrospective review by the AV Club said that Willis's everyman persona is key to the film's success. Rickman said he believed it had continued to find fans decades after its release because it was delivered with wit and style. Contemporary review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes offers a 94% approval rating from the aggregated reviews of 84 critics, with an average rating of 8.610. The consensus reads, its many imitators and sequels have never come close to matching the taut thrills of the definitive holiday action classic. The film also has a score of 72 out of 100 on Metacritic, based on 14 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Readers of Rolling Stone ranked it the number 10 action film of all time in a 2015 poll, while Empire readers voted it number 20 in 2017. In 2001, the American Film Institute, AFI, ranked Die Hard number 39 on its 100 Years, 100 Thrills list, recognizing the most heart-pounding films. In 2008, Empire ranked it number 29 on its list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. In 2014, The Hollywood Reporter's Entertainment Industry Voted ranking named it the 83rd best film of all time. The film's characters have also been recognized. In 2003, the AI ranked Hans Gruber number 46 on its 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains list. In 2006, Empire ranked McClane number 12 on its list of its 100 greatest movie characters. Gruber followed at number 17. Several publications have listed it as one of the greatest action films of all time, including number 1 by Empire, IGN, and Entertainment Weekly, number 10 by Time Out New York, number 14 by The Guardian, number 18 by Men's Health, and unranked by Complex, Esquire, and Evening Standard. Adding to the debate over Die Hard's status as a Christmas film, it has appeared on several lists of the top holiday films, including at number 1 by Empire and San Francisco Gate, number 4 by Entertainment Weekly and The Hollywood Reporter, number 5 by Digital Spy, and number 8 in a Radio Times Readers' Poll. Sequels. The success of Die Hard spawned 4 film sequels, beginning with Die Hard 2 in 1990, which was rushed into production to capitalize on the original's popularity. Stuart and McTiernan did not return for the film. McTiernan was replaced by Rennie Harlan. Die Hard 2 is the last film in the series to feature the involvement of de Souza, Bedelia, Vel Johnson, Atherton, Silver, and Gordon. Silver and Gordon fell out with each other, and Willis, after filming concluded, delaying the production of a third film, Die Hard with a Vengeance, 1995. This sequel also took longer to develop because of the difficulty in scripting an original scenario that had not already been used by one of Die Hard's many imitators. McTiernan returned to direct Die Hard with a Vengeance, his only other film in the series. The film's plot pits McClane against Hans Gruber's brother Simon, Jeremy Irons. Live Free or Die Hard, also known as Die Hard 4.0, was released in 2007. In it, McClane teams up with a hacker, Justin Long, to fight cyber terrorists led by Thomas Gabriel, Timothy Oliphant. The film was controversial for its studio mandate to target younger audiences, requiring much of the violence and profanity prevalent in the rest of the series to be excluded. Even so, it was financially and critically successful. The 5th film in the series, A Good Day to Die Hard, 2013, teams McClane up with his son Jack for an adventure in Moscow. The film was considered a financial success. It was derided by critics and fans, and the negative reception stalled the franchise. A Good Day to Die Hard is considered the weakest entry in the series. Although Willis expressed interest in a 6th and final film, plans for a prequel film were canceled following the acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney in 2019, and Willis retired from acting in 2022 after being diagnosed with aphasia, a condition which affects his ability to communicate. Die Hard remains the most critically acclaimed film in the series based on aggregated reviews. As the sequels progressed, they increasingly hewed closer to the 1980s-style action films Die Hard had eschewed, McClane becoming an invincible killing machine surviving damage that would have killed his original incarnation. NPR called Die Hard a genuinely great movie whose legacy has been tarnished by lackluster sequels, 204. According to The Guardian, the evolution of the action genre can be tracked by the differences in each Die Hard sequel, as McClane evolves from human into a superhuman. A comic book prequel and sequel have been released. Die Hard Year One is set in 1976 and chronicles McClane as a rookie officer. A Million Ways to Die Hard is set 30 years after Die Hard and features a retired McClane seeking out a serial killer. The idea has a certain allure to it. A cop is trapped inside a high-rise with a team of desperate terrorists. He is all that stands between them and their hostages. Give the terrorist leader brains and a personality, make one of the hostages the estranged wife of the cop, and you've got a movie. The name of the movie is Die Hard, and it stars Bruce Willis in another one of those Hollywood action roles where the hero's shirt is ripped off in the first reel so you can see how much time he has been spending at the gym. He's a New York cop who has flown out to Los Angeles for Christmas, and we quickly learn that his marriage was put on hold after his wife, Bonnie Bedelia, left for the coast to accept a great job offer. She is now a vice president of the multinational Nakatomi Corp., and shortly after Willis makes his surprise entrance at her office party, the terrorists strike. They, too, are a multinational group led by a German named Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, who is well-dressed and has a neatly trimmed beard and talks like an intellectual and thinks he is superior to the riffraff he has to associate with. He has a plan that has been devised with clockwork precision involving the theft of millions of dollars in negotiable bonds, and it is only after Willis starts causing trouble that he is forced to take the Nakatomi employees as hostages. The terrorists are skilled and well-armed, and there are a lot of them. Willis's strategy involves keeping them off guard with lightning attacks from his hiding place on an upper floor of the building that is still under construction. This plan involves the deployment of a great many stunts and special effects, such as when Willis swings through a plate glass window on the end of a fire rope or when he drops plastics explosives down the elevator shaft. On a technical level, there's a lot to be said for Die Hard. It's when we get to some of the unnecessary adornments of the script that the movie shoots itself in the foot. Willis remains in constant radio contact with a police officer on the ground, Reginald VelJohnson, who tries to keep his morale up. But then the filmmakers introduce a gratuitous and unnecessary additional character, the deputy police chief, Paul Gleason, who doubts that the guy on the other end of the radio is really a New York cop at all. As nearly as I can tell, the deputy chief is in the movie for only one purpose: to be consistently wrong at every step of the way and to provide a phony counterpoint to Willis's progress. The character is so willfully useless, so dumb, so much a product of the idiot plot syndrome, that all by himself he successfully undermines the last half of the movie. Thrillers like this need to be well-oiled machines, with not a single wasted moment. Inappropriate and wrong-headed interruptions reveal the fragile nature of the plot and prevent it from working. Without the deputy chief and all that he represents, Die Hard would have been a more than passable thriller. With him, it's a mess. And that's a shame, because the film does contain superior special effects, impressive stunt work, and good performances, especially by Rickman as the terrorist. Here's a suggestion for thriller makers. You can't go wrong if all of the characters in your movie are at least as intelligent as most of the characters in your audience. Die Hard review. Only the hardest of hearts could fail to enjoy the great 80s action classic, re-released for its 30th anniversary, with uproarious explosions, deafening shootouts, and smart-aleck taglines following the bad guys getting shot. It's the film that wrested the catchphrase "Yippee-ki-yay" away from Roy Rogers with a certain vulgar addition. Every pub quizzer knows it's a Christmas movie, but not many know of its unexpected cinematic use of the Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Ninth. The terrorists whistle it as they get closer to the target. Bruce Willis plays New York police detective John McClane in Los Angeles for an uneasy reunion with his semi-estranged wife, having failed to support her career move out there. While at her office building, owned by a Japanese corporation, the whole place is taken over by fanatically armed German extremists, an unfortunate juxtaposition of Axis powers. The intruders are led by Hans Gruber, a renegade German terrorist with links to Northern Ireland's new Provo Front. It's a glorious scene stealer for Alan Rickman, though it's a credit to Willis's cheeky charisma that his scene is not in fact stolen. Single-handedly, covered in sweat and muscles, wearing nothing on his top half but a manly vest and finally not even that, McClane hides in the elevator shaft and takes down Gruber and his whole hideous crew one by one. The only help he has from the outside is a tough, capable LAPD cop, Al Powell, Reginald VelJohnson. The stuffed shirts of the FBI are certainly no help, and the TV news media are needless to say the terrorists' contemptible, useful idiots. Finally, his wife, Holly Bonnie Bedelia, introduces herself to Al using her married name, and the natural order of things is restored. It's an incredible 80s time capsule, with Hans fondling a Filofax as he silkily addresses the hostages, and a coke-snorting office worker describing the situation in terms of a hostile takeover with talk of green mail, poison pill, and white knight. An innocent pleasure. Since the advent of the moving picture, there have been many great action movies. They have challenged what was possible in film and thrilled us in exciting new ways. However, how many of them can say they had a fresh-faced Bruce Willis fighting and swearing his way through a tower during the holidays? In this regard, There's only one. Die Hard, a lean and scrappy work of action cinema that never sets a foot wrong, even as its central character crashes through everything in his path as he fights to stay alive. It remains as magnificent as one could ever hope such a work to be. Even more than that, it is a perpetual reminder of the iconic status that the now retired Willis has and will always hold in the history of the medium. The story is a simple one, but this is by no means a detriment, as it thrives off the joyous manner in which it executes all of it. The film's unlikely hero is John McClane, Willis, who has traveled to Los Angeles from New York in the hopes of rekindling his relationship with his wife, Holly, Bonnie Bedelia, from whom he has grown apart. Though he doesn't like flying and is generally uncomfortable with the whole situation, he still wants to do everything he can to make it work. However, his trip doesn't go quite as planned, as life has other curveballs in store for John that will threaten him, Holly, and everyone else at the holiday party at the Nakatomi Plaza. Shortly after his arrival, the hypnotic Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, and a group of well-trained operatives take over the entire building. They move with speed and efficiency, getting everything under control without anyone able to stop them. That is, except for John, who will have to piece together what it is they want and sabotage their plot before it's too late. While we live in an era where action spectacle is only getting bigger and bigger with special effects opening up new doors, all that makes Die Hard so enduring is its practical sensibility. The presentation ensures that everything feels real and grounded even as the story reaches new heights. There are explosions and fights galore, though a lot of it is just about a barefoot man running around trying to fight back in a situation where he is vastly outgunned. When it gets loud, it really gets loud, but the engagement comes from all the quieter in-between moments as well. Die Hard relies on Willis to carry the story, and my goodness does he do so. Though there are a whole host of classic catchphrases that have become memorable, such as, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," or "Welcome to the party, pal," it would be nothing without Willis's performance to bring them to life. His gruffness and snark are what make it all work. He is both a charismatic cowboy and a lonely man, swept up in a crisis that threatens the person he cares about more than anything in the world. We are placed in the hands of Willis, and we believe every single moment of the performance as he determinedly carries us along. His comedic timing is impeccable, and his delivery is unparalleled, making for a frantic yet fun ride as we watch him find his way through predicament after predicament. That he can do this while also hitting all the emotional notes in a more confessional scene remains underrated. However, one would be remiss to not also note the delicious and dynamic performance of the late great Rickman. There is perhaps no greater villain who manages to be equally terrifying and charming simultaneously. Just the way he savors every line strikes fear as we are mesmerized by him simply sitting in a chair on the radio. Not only that, but he can turn on a dime like in the scene where McClane thinks he has caught him. However, thinking quickly since neither has seen the other's face, Gruber puts on an act where he fools our hero. There is always fun to be had in seeing an actor play someone who is then also acting, and Rickman is just utterly delightful in how he does this. It is both comedic and unsettling, as we can see in his eyes that he is just waiting for his moment to drop the act to strike. He has such a poise to him that the moments of brutality where he blows people away without a second thought hit hard. Though we feel every aspect of how calculated he is, the cold cruelty underneath it is so finely tuned that it remains persistently chilling. While many may remember the actor for his turn in the Harry Potter series, Severus Snape has nothing on the menacing magnetism of Gruber. Rickman inhabits the character so completely and thoroughly that you feel as though he may reach out through the screen to grab you by the throat. He makes him into a slippery force of nature who always keeps us guessing. There are a scattering of sideshow moments that take us out of the action and lack the same panache of the rest of the experience. But when it builds to its show-stopping conclusion, that is all forgotten. While the film's legacy has often been reduced to conversations that go back and forth about whether the film should be counted as a Christmas movie, the real truth is this: Die Hard is a marvelous movie to watch any time of the year. Top to bottom, it is endlessly entertaining and well-crafted with outstanding work from all involved. No matter how much action movies have continued to grow, this will always be the cinematic elder statesman that can scrap with the best of them. One only wishes they could find a way to turn back the clock to see it when it first hit theaters, to bottle up the sublime feeling of seeing such a stunning work with a crowd for the very first time. An alternative to homogenized Hollywood action films, Die Hard incorporates qualities otherwise absent from action heroes prior to the film's release: personal shortcomings, vulnerability, and fallibility. In a word, humanity. These are the components that make Bruce Willis John McClane the screen's most affable and relatable action hero, and what have bonded audiences to him for over 25 years. Considered through a series of trials seemingly designed to test and therein reaffirm his pointedly New Yorker masculinity, McClane represents a hero cop, the likes of which moviegoers had never seen in 1988, just as the film itself was so unique and brightly innovative within its genre. Released by 20th Century Fox to thundering success, the film launched the career of star Willis into that of a screen icon. Began an entertaining franchise that followed with multiple sequels and spawned countless copycats trying to achieve the same thrilling, claustrophobic magic of the original. But the first remains the gold standard for action filmmaking. What action movie tropes Die Hard doesn't follow, it reinvents or altogether originates, and all of them have yet to be bettered. Developed from Jeb Stuart and Stephen E. D'Souza's adaptation of Richard Thorpe's source novel, Nothing Lasts Forever, the film became another project on which producer Joel Silver and director John McTiernan, who made Predator together the year before, could collaborate. Their budget was a staggeringly low $30 million. If produced today, Die Hard would surely pass the $100 million mark. Casting inexpensive actors kept costs down. Aside from Blind Date, 1987, and his 5-year run on TV's Moonlighting, Bruce Willis was a relative unknown, chosen only after Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and Richard Gere turned down the McClane role. Stage actor Alan Rickman, hired for his first motion picture by Silver, created the archetypal Eurotrash villain with Hans Gruber, and in the years to come would be hired for other villain roles in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, 1990. And Quigley Down Under, 1991. Somehow, test screenings received poor feedback, which Fox believed due to Willis's unproven status as an action star. Unfavorable testing meant Fox had all but written off Die Hard as a guaranteed flop. And though the film's eventual $80 million box office take also sounds paltry when compared to today's popular franchises, it nearly tripled its budget and surprised everyone involved when it performed so well. What makes Die Hard such a unique experience, when set apart even from its sequels, is the feeling that McClane is not an action hero. He's just a normal guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. Outmatched and outgunned, he bitches about his bad luck and copes with his impossible situation through sarcasm. Long before McClane ever took a fire hose-assisted dive off 20th Century Fox headquarters, standing in for Nakatomi Plaza, action heroes like Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and the various James Bonds were performing similar stunts in popcorn-munching shoot-'em-ups and withstanding infinite blows with nary a scratch. McClane is not an impervious robotic warrior carved from the template of the action movie gods. Embodied by Willis with pitch-perfect humanism, McClane bleeds, cries out in pain and emotional desperation, and has imperfections that become his trademark. One of the film's most memorable characteristics is how much physical punishment McClane endures, and how such wear amasses on him through the course of the film. His physical and psychological vulnerability and deep-seated flaws are what make him believable, enduring, and what ensure the viewer's immersion. McClane, in his first of many man-alone against terrorist group scenarios, may seem formulaic today, but only because Die Hard originated the formula. A New York cop, McClane visits his estranged wife Holly, Bonnie Bedelia, for Christmas in Los Angeles, and a group of international terrorists, headed by Rickman's refined Hans Gruber, take over her workplace in Nakatomi Plaza. In hiding and taking out the terrorists one by one, McClane's conflict proves unlike most battles in the action genre, in that he's not just fighting the terrorists, he's reclaiming his male authority over Holly. Subverting terrorists is simply a means to that end. When John arrives at Nakatomi, he finds Holly has done well for herself in an executive role under her maiden name, Gennaro, and for her hard work, she's earned a Rolex prize, a symbol of her success as a modern woman who has no apparent need for a husband. Holly and John's respective West Coast/East Coast living arrangements, John's threatened male ego over Holly's use of her maiden name Gennaro, and Holly's Rolex-rewarded success at Nakatomi, these are the most immediate conflicts for McClane to resolve. Mere terrorist threats provide McClane the opportunity to place himself in control, albeit indirectly. Fortunately, Holly is in a position that she needs to be rescued, and therein she needs her estranged husband to survive. Innately heroic, sympathetic, and heterosexual, John McClane contains qualities that go hand in hand with his status as a New Yorker. After all, the stereotypical New York persona of 1988 could be personified by a tough, heterosexual male. Indeed, Die Hard would not be Die Hard if McClane hailed from Delaware. McClane confirms his heterosexual status early on, both in sexual and modernized cowboy terms. He displays hetero characteristics not by his association with Holly, but rather through his wandering eyes that scope out women on the plane and in the airport, his aversion to a male kiss at the Nakatomi Christmas party, and every time he revisits a naked pinup girl cutout posted on a maintenance wall in Nakatomi Plaza. When first arriving in Los Angeles, McClane finds himself virginal to West Coast ways. Only in LA becomes his motto, as if LA is silly, off somehow, and perhaps effeminate or homosexual, whereas New York is effectually masculine and heterosexual. McClane is a tough New York cop, whereas one Los Angeles SWAT team member shouts, "Ow!" after he bumps into a rosebush thorn. Consequently, McClane is established as a newly envisioned but classical Western hero, an Easterner going out west to tame the frontier. Gruber, McClane's nemesis throughout the film via walkie-talkie, even points this out later by referring to McClane as a cowboy. McClane's masculinity and human susceptibility are further defined by his body. When the terrorists break in, McClane has been washing up after a long flight, wearing nothing but a white undershirt, slacks, and bare feet, his garb for the film's duration. Not protected by bulletproof vests or RoboCop armor, McClane is, for all intents and purposes, stripped down. In this raw form, he overpowers foreign enemies without benefit of protection, as though his most simplified nature and manhood are enough to mow down terrorist threats. And yet, when not armored to the teeth, action heroes are often rippling and shirtless, another heroic stereotype McClane avoids. From the naked appearance of future cyborgs who have traveled into back in time in the Terminator movies to John Rambo's sweaty shirtlessness, male action heroes often necessitate their own visually remarkable musculature, proving their exceptional masculinity to the viewer by way of their biceps and pectorals. Willis does not reduce his character to a faceless, muscle-bound body, however. His body is not the typically ripped male action hero physique. He has strength and dexterity to be sure. He's lean but lacks the veiny, sinewy Herculean body of a Schwarzenegger or Stallone. Already an underdog compared to other action heroes, McClane's unassuming physique and barefoot state leave him much to overcome, as does the femininity that this state implies. In the first scenes, a fellow airplane passenger suggests McClane make fists with his toes to relieve jet lag. McClane offers a look of skepticism, perhaps because of the ridiculous or feminine nature of the act. Toes or feet are often a metonym for femininity. Rarely are there women with foot fetishes in film. Nonetheless, minutes later, McClane is barefoot in Holly's office curling his toes. Clenching them into fists acknowledges that McClane resists stereotypical absolutist tough guy ideals, that his feminine side is indulged in this private act, one he would certainly not perform in front of Holly or Gruber, and also twists that femininity into something symbolically male. Fists. McClane's male and female egos seem to be at war. While he can curl his toes to relieve jet lag, he still must rescue his wife and solidify his status as the dominant male in their relationship. Secretive admittances of femininity aside, in contrast, McClane's entire ascension to the top of Nakatomi Plaza signifies an unprecedented phallic growth, complete with an explosive climax. Rather than accepting capture by Gruber's threatening male presence, McClane escapes, preventing symbolic castration. Proving his undeniably brash and predominant masculinity, he climbs a suggestively shaped building, killing terrorist after terrorist along the way, all the while usurping Gruber's threat to McClane's manhood, the next best thing to a pissing contest. And what better way to illustrate McClane's superior New York masculinity over LA's dainty, comparatively feminine persona than coming all over it? Male dominance and substantiation become Die Hard's underlying theme and central conflict, whereas the basic saving-the-day plot feels secondary. McClane resolves said conflict by reaching a C4-induced orgasm, rescuing his damsel in distress, and re-establishing solidity in his otherwise broken marriage to Holly. The building itself, a glass tower, describes the fragility of masculinity, just how threatening a challenge is for the male ego. And what challenges there are. Gruber, aggressive SWAT teams, FBI assault choppers, and LAPD armed carriers. At any moment, McClane could shatter, but with broken glass all around him, he walks right over it, barefoot and bleeding. Though his bare feet might suggest vulnerability or femininity in another hero, McClane owns this state by sprinting across the glass while dodging bullets. His feet gush blood in an obviously painful moment, but McClane, talking to his compatriot Sina Powell, Reginald Veltson, on a walkie-talkie, remains calm and collected in voice. Those of us in the audience see his face, wincing in pain. McClane even becomes a shoulder to cry on, as Powell confesses he accidentally shot a child on the job, allowing for a moment of male bonding that unfurls feminine qualities in both. McClane is at his weakest when pulling the glass from his foot, eventually weeping as he communicates to Powell his goodbye message and apology to Holly. A message she never hears because McClane survives. Had she heard such a tearful confession, doubtless McClane's male ego could not have been restored. By the end of the film, both officers' problems are solved and male egos intact. Powell guns down the last surviving terrorist to redeem himself, and McClane reclaims Holly. Also necessary is McClane's need to squash out his competition. In his plot to invade Nakatomi Plaza under the guise of international terrorists, Gruber's master plan, quite cleverly, is an elaborate heist that leaves Holly's male co-workers, McClane's initial competition, dead when they interfere. As Gruber has seized control of the glass phallus, McClane's eventual orgasmic and explosive victory also signals Gruber's masculine failure. Throughout the film, Gruber attempts to gain control of the building, asserting his power over this massive phallic symbol, and thus declare his own masculine identity. Each time one of Gruber's terrorists is pumped full of lead or an entire floor is detonated, Gruber loses men, thus control over the phallic glass tower. McClane, a self-proclaimed fly in the ointment, eventually stomps out Gruber's masculinity atop Nakatomi Plaza, thwarting the final plan in a shower of flames and raining down office paper. McClane even goes so far as to drop Gruber out a window by unfastening Holly's Rolex, and in this action solves two problems at once. He kills the bad guy, but he also unfastens Holly from her symbol of success, feminine independence, and occupational authority over her husband. For all the Freudian interpretation this film provides, it also provides a nationalistic interpretation as well. American exceptionalism, closely related to male exceptionalism in film, rears its head as the dialogue between McClane and Gruber sets Die Hard up as a modern-day Western in which McClane is the good American cowboy and Gruber is a villainous foreign invader, perhaps even a Native American. After making a High Noon reference, Gruber is proved un-American and thus criminal almost exclusively through his knowledge of Hollywood movie trivia. Gruber, a German-born Brit, claims John Wayne starred in High Noon, and McClane, the American, corrects him to the fact that it was Gary Cooper. By association, this underlines several good guy versus bad guy scenarios from Westerns, using High Noon's classic standoff between Marshal Will Kane and criminal Frank Miller as a model. It suggests the cowboy McClane and criminal Gruber engage in a uniformly classic struggle of pure good versus pure evil, thus idealizing their conflict as something classic in the viewer's eyes. Given High Noon's intended allegory to McCarthyism, we see their duel illustrated in terms of McClane's American purity versus Gruber's pro-communist, in metaphor only, un-American impurity. In fact, the film's most memorable line comes as an embrace of traditional Western heroes, using McClane's own ironic humor as a postmodern shift for traditional cowboy war cries like "Yippee-ki-yay." In Die Hard's sequels, the line is used as a garnish. Only in its original use did it have any meaning. "You know my name, but who are you? Just another American who saw too many movies as a child. Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne? Rambo? Marshall Dillon?" Was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually. I really dig those sequined shirts. "Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?" Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. In this most famous of movie lines, we see how, whether running barefoot across broken glass or just barely catching an opening as he falls down a ventilation shaft, McClane does the impossible, and yet makes it all very plausible, not only through his vulnerable male ego, but his wisecracks throughout the situation. McClane's dialogue is filled with witty comebacks, one-liners, and pop culture references lost on Gruber. Not that Gruber is always there to hear them. "Now I know what a TV dinner feels like," he quips to himself as he squeezes through a vent. Some of McClane's best moments are by himself as he talks himself through the situation. Whereas stone-faced lone heroes had machine-gunned their way through countless bad guys in action movies before, McClane just an average cop, after all, not even a super cop. When the terrorists first arrive, his first instinct is to escape and call for help. "Why the fuck didn't you stop them, John?" he asks himself after first running. "Because then you'd be dead too, asshole," he answers. In this unpolished treatment of McClane and the character's ability to make observations about his own situation, he becomes instantly real when compared to his unstoppable counterparts. He's also completely sympathetic as an underdog fighting a much larger opponent while contending with the bureaucratic nonsense of local authorities. Deputy Police Chief Dwayne T. Robinson, Paul Gleason, and FBI agents Johnson & Johnson, Robert Davey and Grant L. Bush. Male action heroes are now typically flawed, sarcastic, unhappy individuals, made heroic through whatever conflict they face. They get shot, dislocate shoulders, have mental disorders, drink too much, and on rare occasion even sacrifice themselves. McClane started it all. In succeeding years, actioners from Under Siege, 1992 to Dread, 2012, pilfered from Die Hard's harmony of claustrophobic space and big action thrills. These copycats are often described as Die Hard on a bus, plane, boat, train, etc., to acknowledge their obvious derivation. This is not only because of the film's box office success or sheer breathless entertainment value, but because director McTiernan made a wonderfully crafted picture teeming with visual and subtextual purpose, as outlined above. Beyond the wellspring of symbolism throughout the film, cinematographer John DeBont, who in 1994 directed his own Die Hard on a Bus riff, Speed, incorporates countless visual flourishes to keep every frame interesting. He projects light through blinds, grills, and grates. He uses steam and lens flares to fill the frame. He bounces light off of water for a glittering reflective effect. Editors John F. Link and Frank J. Uriost pieced together DeBont's slick lensing to make every action scene clear, even gorgeous, especially when compared to today's shaky standards. Production designer Jackson DeGovia created the whole skyscraper setting by using an actual in-construction building and augmenting it with touches of Frank Lloyd Wright's Japanese-inspired architecture. Overall, McTiernan's production is an accomplished piece of filmmaking whose influence in the genre is still evident. As an aside, one would be remiss if Michael Kamen's score went unnoticed. Along with the Christmastime setting, the composer plays a deepened orchestral version of Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Now considered a holiday favorite, Ode to Joy finds itself bonding directly to Gruber's crew, whereas McClane has no significant riff of his own, aside from the occasional whistle of Jingle Bells, primarily due to Kamen's use of ode to joy. And the inclusion of Let It Snow at the film's finale, Die Hard, a violent, R-rated, family-unfriendly blockbuster set in the snowless, unless you count falling paper in the finale, Winter of Los Angeles, is now strangely a Christmas classic. Come this holiday season, consider forgoing your annual dose of A Christmas Story or It's a Wonderful Life for something less family-oriented and more actionized. Nothing says happy holidays like McClane's bloodied terrorist arriving by elevator with "Now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho" stenciled in blood on his sweater. Though Die Hard is less an escape into mindless action than one man's desperate mission to reclaim his family and assert himself as paterfamilias, the film's divergence from standard Hollywood actioner tropes is what makes the film great, timeless even. Justifying male power in every other scene, Die Hard subjects audiences to McClane's hard-edged, unyielding attempts to boast his masculinity through his occasional feminine qualities. And granted, if reading the film from a feminist point of view, one might find the subtext questionable. Still, that there is a subtext involving a hero whose primary conflict is the dynamic between his masculine and feminine sides elevates the film from its brethren. McClane's macho behavior is easily dismissed because, quite simply, the picture is just too damn fun, smart, barely dated, and undoubtedly readable beyond traditional action movies. Die Hard changed the genre forever. Its triumph resides in the complexity of John McClane. Put any other hero type in his place and the film fails, or becomes banal and common. Rarely does an action blockbuster take such risks and offer a hero whose vulnerability and humanism outweighs the picture's violence, even as it supplies expertly arranged action. That Die Hard achieves this unlikely equilibrium makes it perhaps the best film of its kind. I Wanted to Be an Actor box office Die Hard's premiere took place on July 12, 1988 at the AFCO Theater in Los Angeles, California in North America. The film received a limited release in 21 theaters in 13 cities on July 15, 1988, earning $16,851, an average of $28.95, $96 on July 22, 1988, across 176 theaters, and earning $7.1 million, an average of $5,569 per theater. The film finished as the number 3 film of the weekend behind Coming to America, $8.8 million in its 4th week of release, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $8.9 million its 5th. The film fell to number 4 in its 3rd week, with a further gross of $6.1 million, just behind Coming to America's $6.4 million Who Framed Roger Rabbit in the debuting romantic comedy Cocktail, $1.7 million in its 4th weekend. It rebounded to the number 3 position with $5.7 million. While the film never claimed the number 1 box office ranking, it spent 10 straight weeks among the top 5 highest-grossing films. In total, the film earned an approximate box office gross of between $81.3 million and $83 million. This made it the 7th highest-grossing film of 1988, behind Crocodile Dundee, $19.3 million, Buddy Comedy Twins, $11.9 million, Fantasy Comedy Big, $14.9 million, Coming to America, $128.1 million, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $14.1 million, and comedy drama Rain Man, 172.72 centimeters, $14.7 million. This figure makes it the 10th highest grossing film worldwide of 1988, behind Big $11 million, Cocktail, $171 million, A Fish Called Wanda, $177 million, Rambo 3, $189 million. Twins, $216 million, Crocodile Dundee to $239 million, Coming to America, $288 million, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, $329 million, and Rain 3, $54 million. The summer of 1988 saw box office grosses totaling $1.7 billion, breaking the previous year record-breaking summer by $100 million. And it was the most successful summer since 1984, when only 3 films earned more than $100 million in North America, defying pre-release expectations. Die Hard was considered an enormous success in a year otherwise dominated by comedy films. Die Hard's overperformance was an anomaly. Compared to other action films such as Rambo 3 and in Red Heat, which failed to meet box office expectations. Film critic Sheila Benson believed this demonstrated a generational shift in audiences and their tastes. In particular, 25 to 37-year-old men had turned against alcohol abuse, sexism, and mindless machismo, along with films like Big and Young Guns Die Hard. is credited with revitalizing 20th Century Fox, which had had few successes in preceding years. It also showed the action genre was not dead. Die Hard movie review. The idea has a certain lure to it. A cop is capped inside a high-rise with a team of desperate terrorists. He is all that stands between them and their hostages. Give the terrorist leader brains and a personality. Make one of the hostages the estranged wife of the cop. And you've got a movie. The name of the movie is Die Hard, and it stars Bruce Willis and another one of those Hollywood action roles where the hero's shirt is ripped off in the first reel, so you can see how much time he has been spending at the gym. He's a New York cop who has flown out to Los Angeles for Christmas, and we quickly learned that his marriage was put on hold after his wife left for the coast to accept a great job offer. She is now a vice president of the multinational Naomi Corp. And shortly after Willis makes his surprise entrance at her office party, the terrorists strike. They too are a multinational group led by a German named H. Greber, who is well-dressed and has a neatly trimmed beard and talks like an intellectual and thinks he is superior to the riff-raff he has to associate with. He has a plan that has been devised with clockwork precision, involving the theft of millions of dollars in negotiable bonds. And it is only after Willis starts causing trouble that he is forced to take the Naomi employees as hostages. The terrorists are skilled and well-armed, and there are a lot of them. Willis' strategy involves keeping them off guard with lightning attacks from his hiding place on an upper floor of the building that is still under construction. This plan involves the deployment of a great many stunts and special effects, such as when Willis swings through a plate glass window on the end of a fire rope, or when he drops plastics explosives down the elevator shaft on a technical level. There's a lot to be said for Die Hard. It's when we get to some of the unnecessary adornments of the script that the movie shoots itself in the foot. Willis remains in constant radio contact with a police officer on the ground who tries to keep his morale up. But then the filmmakers introduce a gratuitous and unnecessary additional character, the deputy police chief, who doubts that the guy on the other end of the radio is really a New York cop at all. As nearly as I can tell, the deputy chief is in the movie for only one purpose: to be consistently wrong at every step of the way and to provide a phony counterpoint to Will's progress. The character is so willfully useless, so dumb, so much a product of the idiot plot syndrome that all by himself he successfully undermines the last half of the movie. Thrillers like this need to be well-oiled machines, with not a single wasted moment. Inappropriate and wrong-headed interruptions reveal the fragile nature of the plot and prevent it from working. Without the deputy chief and all that he represents, Die Hard would have been a more than passable thriller with him. It's a mess, and that's a shame because the film does contain superior special effects, impressive stunt work, and good performances, especially by Rickman as the terrorist. Here's a suggestion for thriller makers. You can't go wrong if all of the characters in your movie are at least as intelligent as most of the characters in your audience. This film, directed by John McCann, screenplay by Jeb Stuart. Steven Adza, based on Nothing Lasts Forever by Rodri Thorpe, produced by Lawrence Gordon. Joel Silver starring Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman, Alexander Gounod, Bonnie Pilia. Cinematography, Jan Diant, edited by Frank J. Uas, John F. Link, music by M. Kamen Production Companies, Gordon Company, Silver Pictures, distributed by 20th Century Fox. Release dates: July 12, 1988, running time 132 minutes, country United States, language English, budget $2,535 million, box office $139, 180, 141.5 million. So guys, this is the review of Die Hard movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share.